Guess we can wave hi to everybody. We're live.
Yeah, we're ready to go. So, David, you ready to go?
Let's do it.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Partner Spotlight series. It's week 8, and we are rolling. And so excited today to have our friends from BluJay here. Today, we're going to have, and let me say BluJay Solutions. Sorry. And let me introduce my guest today is David Landau, Chief Product Officer for BluJay Solutions. David, welcome to the Partner Spotlight series.
Thomas, it's great to be here. I wish we could do it in person, but this is the next best thing. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to have you, and appreciate your time. I know you're very busy being the Chief Product Officer. I think you got a few things going on, but I know our audience is going to be looking forward to hearing, your thoughts on these questions that we ask everyone. And with that said, let me just remind everyone that we are live. We are using LinkedIn Live and Zoom Live, and we encourage you to post your questions and your comments and join in on the discussion. And David will take those questions. If we don't get to them in time, then what we'll do is we'll get those to David. We'll get answers, and we'll make sure to get them back to you. So with that said, David, the first thing I like to do when I bring on a guest is I like to talk about how I either know you or what we've got something in common. And, you're no stranger to Project 44. You've worked with Project 44, a couple of times. Which is great, and we've always enjoyed working with you and in your teams. But the one thing that I found out after looking at David's bio and then talking to David about it, but I noticed that David went to Duke University, and
Yep.
so you're a big Blue Devil.
I am. I grew up in North Carolina, just down the road in Raleigh, and it's ACC basketball country. In elementary school, we literally stopped class and wheeled a TV in order to watch the ACC tournament. So it was the lifeblood of what we did. And growing up a Duke fan in the middle of Tar Heel territory was not easy, but I was fortunate enough to get into Duke. Had a great 4 years there. Won a championship my freshman year, not me personally, of course, but the school, the team. And then my senior year was the year that Coach K was out. So we went from championship to, not even making the tournament, but we actually had our football team make a bowl game which never happened back then. So got a chance to see, all sides of Duke sports, but it was a great experience.
That's awesome. And my son is a huge Duke fan, and we have had the honor and privilege of getting to go to Cameron to watch a game. So
nothing like it.
Yeah, exactly. But my allegiance lies with Tennessee, but Duke is definitely second on the basketball list. So anyway,
nothing wrong with the Vols. Rick Barnes got a great program too.
Yeah. So that's kind of that connection thing. How I always start these partner series, and it's just a fun way to get it going. Now we'll get to the serious stuff. So we've got a set of questions that we ask all our partners. We're very interested in what's going on right now with technology, with supply chains, and obviously with what, specifically where we are in the middle of a pandemic and how customers are taking technology and building more resilient supply chains. I know that you guys have done a lot of studies, and you're doing a lot of things around resiliency as well. So I think this is a perfect topic.
Absolutely. In fact, we've got our SOAR customer conference virtual this year coming up shortly later this month, and resilience is the theme. There's no question that it is a different time for a supply chain. Forget talking about pandemic and working from home and so forth. Just the dynamics of supply chains have changed, especially in the transportation. We're seeing just the implications and the ramifications and the needs of customers change quite a bit as a result.
Yeah. So, all right. So we'll get going with the first question. And it kind of goes right into what I said, but with the pandemic, we saw many companies exposed with their supply chain issues, and now they're looking to use technology to build more resilient supply chains. So what I'm interested in is which technology solutions and products are BluJay's customers buying and implementing? So it would be great to hear.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking. We've got a pretty broad portfolio, and there's a lot of different areas that are seeing attention. I'll highlight a couple that I think might be interesting. The first one is on procurement. Obviously, for any of our customers or any shippers and 3PLs who are on our conversation today, they know, capacity is really down at 2018 level of tightness. Rates are going through the roof. It is a very challenging time trying to find that capacity. what's interesting is we've seen a lot of activity around our procurement solution. And oftentimes when you go out and you do a bid and you're doing a procurement, you're doing it with the hopes of reducing your freight costs. That's not the world we live in right now. We had customers who were in the middle of doing bids when everything really happened and capacity really tightened, and suddenly carriers are coming back and saying, let me rework the bids. We've got customers who are dealing with carriers simply rejecting a lot of the contract loads just because of the capacity tightness and so forth. And so what's happening is a lot of shippers are coming to us wanting to do bids, wanting to do these engagements, not so much to reduce the freight costs, because that's just not realistic anymore. But what they're finding is they want to go ahead and just lock in costs. They want to limit that exposure, because if I go out to spot market, I'm getting even higher rates and worse rates. And frankly, I don't know who I'm going to be working with from a carrier perspective. And so there's a lot of energy around procurement, but in a very atypical way, just based on where we are in the economic cycle.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, no, it is very interesting. And on the flip side, procurement is kind of one aspect of strategic planning for transportation, and the other side is modeling. So if you saw any of our news from earlier this spring, we announced a partnership with LlamaSoft. LlamaSoft is a great partner of ours. They are definitely the industry leader in terms of simulation and network planning technology. We partner with them, leveraging their cloud to build out BluJay's transportation modeling solution. And the premise behind that is that if you think about a TMS, what does a TMS do really well? It takes your orders, picks the right carriers, builds your loads, tenders them, and then partnering with companies like Project 44, tracks those loads. That's fantastic, but all that execution is really based off of the policy decisions. How should your TMS be configured? What rules should I have and the like? TMSs don't help you determine what your policy should be. And that's where a modeling solution comes into play. And so we built out our modeling solution with LlamaSoft to help you consume all of the data that we have in the TMS, whether it's historical data, rate data, and the like. Take that information, run optimization, run simulation, and then potentially change the policies to see the result. And what it does is, in a very frankly easy to use way, because this isn't a 6-month long network optimization study. This is a very kind of hands-on, almost tactical modeling tool, if you would. And what it does is it allows you to figure out what should my policies be. And I'll give you an example, because that's, I think, hopefully going to make this a little more concrete and tangible for folks. We had a food manufacturer, someone who came to us and said, hey, we ship to Walmart. And of course, if you ship to Walmart, you're dealing with OTIF, on time and in full. And you're trying to find that balance of cost versus service. And it's not just Walmart, it's everybody. And they have opportunities to do consolidation, because that will help them save their costs. But it does impact my service level. So how much consolidation should I do? How much should I not do? And so we took their data, we ran it through the modeling solution, and we found a couple of different examples. The first one was, they said, well, for this subset of data, what happens if I maximize my service? Well, the best way to maximize service is ship everything direct and no consolidation at all. And what we found was, based off of their rates and historical performance of the carriers in the lanes, going down the highest service path would be about $2.3 million in cost for that chunk of data, and drive about 90% service level. Okay. So pretty good. Then we said, what's the lowest cost scenario? So if I maximize consolidation and put as many loads on a truck as possible to minimize my costs, what does that scenario look like? Turned out to be about 1.3 million, so about 45% cheaper, but service level dropped to 85%. And of course, if you're shipping to the big retailers like Walmart and Target, they will actually, of course, hit you with chargebacks. And so who knows if that really makes the right decision. So what was the sweet spot? What happens if we allow 2 stops or 3 stops or top off at 4 stops? And what we found actually in their case was 4 stops. You could actually set up to 4 stops of consolidation, and your total freight spend, their total freight spend was 1.36 million. So $60,000 more than the lowest, pretty nominal, but the on-time percentage was 89%. So essentially just 1 point off of the best service level. So through this sort of modeling tool, which didn't take very long at all, they're able to say, okay, now I know how to configure the policies in the TMS. 4 stops per load is a max to run that best balance between service level and cost.
That's great. And thank you for that example, because, I was following it because I'm a TMS junkie, but
yep.
For most people, yeah. I mean, to be able to understand it from that standpoint, you gave a great example from an industry, and how people would be shipping and the savings. Um, I think the modeling piece, that's interesting the way that you've incorporated that in to be more like a tactical modeling capability versus more of a strategic. Because normally when I think of modeling, I think of taking huge data sets, pushing them out in another application, or having them sit out next to the TMS.
Right.
And then because I want to pull data from the TMS, obviously, like rates and everything, and then run those scenarios and then import it all back into the TMS and then go make my changes. So that's really cool.
Yeah, we're excited about it. I think it's very complementary to the types of tools that customers already have, whether it's from us or the big network optimization tools from, LlamaSoft and others.
Great.
Yep.
Awesome. That's a great example. Anything else that your customers are buying, like around the TMS capabilities, or just the TMS in general?
Certainly, I mean, I would say that the TMS, the demand has been very high for sure. Our teams are very active, involved in selection processes and the like. I think it is interesting though, setting aside the purchasing of the technology, just the volume going through our network. Recognize that our network is roughly 17 million loads per year. So we have a lot of information going through the network, and the volume continues to go higher. And what we're actually seeing, frankly, is a bit of a transformation where the number of loads maybe, or the amount of freight spend is roughly the same, but we're actually seeing more smaller shipments go through. So the more real-time nature, kind of just-in-time nature of this kind of environment that we're in is also kind of transforming how companies are looking at using their TMS.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a follow-on to that, are there any specific, you called out one, you said a food manufacturer, but
Yep.
are there other specific industries that your customers are falling into where you're seeing them adopt technology faster?
Yeah, I would tell you there's probably three that I'll touch on as examples where whether it's adopting technology or potentially tweaking how they use the technology comes into play. I touched on food. I probably want to just bring food back up for a little bit more because I think what we've seen, at least for the last 9 months and probably the next 12 months, I would imagine, is a shift in the food supply chain. And you might be seeing this as well from your perspective, because I know we have a lot of joint food customers. Um, if you were to rewind 12 months ago, there was a pretty even balance between the essentially the selling channels for food. But now it's shifted because frankly, a lot of people aren't going to restaurants nearly as much. School cafeterias, office cafes, and the like aren't open. And
Right.
so that traditional food service distribution channel of folks who are the primary supplier of everything from ketchup to napkins to meat to these cafeterias, that channel isn't there anymore, or it's certainly a lot smaller than it was. On the flip side, grocery stores are busier than ever. Home delivery channels for these grocery stores, and whether it's their stores or it's the third party companies that come and actually pick up from the grocery stores for you, or the Postmates and the Uber Eats, and essentially the direct to consumer side of the food space is far greater than it's ever been. And so again, that changes the dynamic in terms of where the inventory is flowing, what modes of transportation do I need, the demands for some of these companies who frankly may not have thought they needed a TMS before, but because of that change and the shift, they are. So we're definitely seeing a big change in the food industry. Uh, you know, for years, there was a lot of investment in home delivery for grocery that didn't take off so much. Clearly, the last 9 months have changed that. Is that a permanent change, or are people dying to get back out to the grocery stores and life will go back to normal at some point? Hard to say, but I think we have seen a fairly tectonic shift, within food. A couple other industries I'll just touch on. Uh, Freight forwarding, which is
Okay.
is an interesting one. What we've seen, and I think what the market has talked about, frankly, over the course of the last couple of months, is a bit of a surge on the import side. Over the course of the spring and the summer, a lot of companies really just sold out of all their inventory. And with manufacturing slowing down and the like, the ability to replenish that inventory really took a hit. And so I think a lot of the indicators we're seeing economically is really a a surge, a spike of imports. And of course, that brings a lot of pressure on the freight forwarders because, frankly, the freight forwarders are the ones who are having to handle that. And so, uh, the freight forwarders dealing with a spike of inventory, and then managing my inbound supply chain is
Right.
certainly a lot different. So we've had a lot of conversations with freight forwarders, both on the the ocean and air side, and how do I handle that and manage that freight. We also are seeing conversations on the customs side, because obviously with all the import, whether it's your import security filings or all the various imports, or dealing with the partner government agencies, whether it's FDA, EPA, or anything else. Um, there's a lot of kind of impact on those supply chains. And at the same time, what we're also seeing is the need for digitization of supply chains for these freight forwarders, because a lot of them are frankly relying on salespeople, emails, even faxes to some extent. And so, we've actually are rolling out right now our new customer portal, which can bolt on to our freight forwarding application to allow not quite an Amazon-like experience, but pretty similar to the customer of the freight forwarder to come online, get quotes, do e-bookings, get track and trace information, documentation. And so the dynamics of the freight forwarding industry is also changing as a result of at least the short-term, spike in imports.
Great. And
Yep.
and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think maybe some of our viewers, maybe not even aware that BluJay has a freight forwarding application.
Yeah.
And I would say an actual platform for freight forwarders.
For sure. Yeah. Now we got a freight forwarding application that uh, has a long, strong heritage and is rolled out in over 100 different countries. It's a big area of the business for us. Frankly, it's a lot of European and Asian and Australian customers who are working with us in the forwarding space. Certainly some in the Americas as well. But I think the U.S. audience, which I think is probably the majority of our audience today, really knows us for, I'll call it domestic TMS.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Now, the
Exactly.
other thing that's kind of the third space I'll touch on, back to your original question
Sure.
of those industries, is we are seeing really a huge spike in activity around the 3PL space. And back to your question of or comment about people didn't know us for freight forwarding, BluJay does have a managed transportation service team. We call it our logistics as a service. It's
Mhm.
based in our Holland, Michigan office. We got a couple hundred folks there who are doing this. In fact, it's pretty cool because they sit, I think they measured out one time, 53 feet from the development team. And so the people who are building the TMS and actual users of the TMS sit, within literally a stone's throw of each other when the office is open. Um, and the demand that we're seeing, again, a lot of food and beverage companies, but other industries as well, for managed transportation services is very high, because it is a challenging time to run transportation departments. And some companies are making the investments in TMS, and we're partnering with them in that. And some are saying, given everyone's working from home except for the factories or whatever it might be, I don't really have time to go through a TMS selection process and an implementation. Can you just handle this for me for the next 12 months, 24 months? And so we have our own managed transportation services team that's busier than ever right now, just given the current environment.
Yeah, and I was going to call that out. So thanks for bringing that up. And I think that's a value add just for customers who are choosing the BluJay solution. So that's it's really cool. I feel sorry for your product team or your development team at times if they're 53 feet away, but
Yep.
actually for the most part, it's probably great because you've got those users who are giving great input. So
Oh,
that's
it makes us better. I mean, they give us input right away. And frankly, they can also be a bit of our guinea pig. So a lot of times when we build new functionality before we release it out to the broader market, we'll take, a team or two from our managed transportation team and say, hey, why don't you try this functionality, see if it drives value, what kind of value does it give you, what changes should we make before we release it, kind of en masse. And it really makes a difference. It gives us a better quality product.
yeah, great. Um, so the next question is more about, how BluJay's customers are using visibility to build resilient supply chains. That we're seeing from a Project 44 standpoint, just huge interest in visibility right now. Visibility is so hot because during this time, at the first of the pandemic when it broke, you nailed it a minute ago. People running out of inventory, ports are shut down, factories are shut down, inventory stuck all over the supply chain. I need to know where my stuff is, right?
Absolutely.
And the end consumer then goes to buy it from a retailer, and at that point they're like, wait a minute, you're out of stock. So it's just been this whole ripple down effect. But yeah, getting back to it, what are your thoughts on visibility and your customers and the TMS?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I could say it much better than you just did, Thomas. I mean, the reality is that um, the demand for for the kind of solutions that Project 44 provides, but doing it in conjunction with the TMS, making it a seamless solution for the customers, is higher than I've seen it before. And I don't think that's slowing down. As an industry, as a country, frankly, we've really become adopted to that greater level of visibility. We're living in the Amazon Prime days. We're expecting things within a day or two, and
Right.
obviously, if you don't have that visibility, if you're shipping to a grocer or you're shipping to an Amazon or somebody else as a manufacturer, if you don't have that visibility, you can't have your on time and full. Your kind of your OTIF scenario. You've got to have that information to make sure you can manage both your supply chain and, frankly, your customer experience and customer expectations uh, as effectively as possible. I'll take it one step further. Um,
Sure.
Visibility is critical, and like I said, we're seeing tremendous adoption of these types of solutions together. I would actually categorize visibility almost one level higher, which is data,
Mhm.
and it's all about the data. We talk at BluJay about our DNA strategy: data, networks, and applications. And I think kind of the cutting edge area that's going to provide more value for our customers on top of the applications is really the data. Because at the end of the day, TMSs are critical, right? You're going to save 5, 10, maybe 15% of freight costs with a TMS. But once you have that as your foundation, where can you go with it? And data is an area that really, if you incorporate it correctly, can really drive more value out of your TMS. And so one of the things that we've invested in on top of the integration with Project 44 is a brand new solution we call BluIQ. And so BluIQ, think of it as a data visualization tool that sits on top of the BluJay application. So you could have it sitting your TMS and your customs application, and maybe even your parcel application sitting side by side. The BluIQ is a layer that consumes information out of those underlying applications and helps you visualize it. But it's more than that, right? You hear that and you think, okay, it's a dashboard. And there's dashboards with every application. But where we've taken this a step further is because the integration is API based as opposed to simply the classic extract, transformation, and load, it creates an interactive, really, I consider it an operational console or an operational dashboard out of the data. So if I'm sitting here looking at a chart or a map or anything else on this BluIQ layer, and it says, hey, you've got 5 shipments that are running late, or here's 10 invoices that have come in and it mismatches and it failed the audit. Because it's an API driven interactive operational console, I can click on that number 5 and boom, it pulls up the screen within the TMS to say, here are the 5 loads and what do you want to do from here? Or here
Mhm.
are the 10 invoices and how do you want to reconcile them? And so it allows for this BluIQ data visualization layer to become an interactive part of that experience, as opposed to simply a dashboard where I look and I find some information, copy it, paste it down, and go try to figure out, where in the system I need to go to actually act on it.
That's great. I,
Yeah.
I actually look forward to getting a demo of that at some point.
Yeah. No, it's pretty cool. We've gotten some great response. The other thing, I'll just, if I may, since you did ask the question, I'll throw out one last example that
Yeah,
is
please.
pretty pertinent for some folks. We also released a new module called Gatehouse earlier this summer.
Hey.
Yeah, yeah, there is that. I didn't even think about that until just now, actually. Um, no connection and no competition, so don't worry.
Oh, no.
No, but what Gatehouse does actually, oh, you could call it YMS Lite. You could call it, frankly, social distancing for your warehouse. Essentially, think about it as an extension of the TMS that enables you to effectively eliminate the interaction between the driver and the warehouse team members. And so imagine if the driver comes up and there's a kiosk instead of a person at the guard shack, and all they do is they enter in their information, answer a couple questions, and the gatehouse system, the kiosk comes back and says, okay, you answer the questions the right way, go to dock number 17, go to yard location number 3, or you know what, you answer the questions the wrong way, turn around and go home and have someone give us a call because we can't let you in for whatever reason. In fact, then they enter into their mobile information, and using the Gatehouse app, the dock workers on their forklift can say, I'm starting to load, pull your trailer in, I'm finished loading, you can leave, and then they check out via that same kiosk. And what that allows us to do is, of course, save potentially labor by not having to have somebody work the gate. But in areas where, let's say Wisconsin right now, or Illinois, not, pretty close to it. I think you're in Chicago. Are you in Chicago?
No, I'm in Tennessee,
You're
but
sorry,
Project
that's right, you're
44
in
is,
Tennessee,
yes.
but yeah, Chicago or Illinois, or Wisconsin, where frankly right now we've got a fair rise in cases. This allows you to essentially create a safer environment, both for your warehouse employees as well as for the drivers coming in, because they don't need to have that interaction. I'm not trading papers back and forth. I'm not face to face with somebody. Who knows if they've got, you know, the masks on and everything else. And so this gatehouse application, very quick to install, obviously fairly limited in scope, but the impact, for a company, for a culture and the environment, it can be pretty significant.
That's awesome. That takes contactless delivery to a new definition.
You should be in marketing.
Well, and then the other thing, we're getting close to time, but
Yeah.
the other thing that I'm very interested in, and wow, this is a great conversation, by the way. You guys are doing some fascinating things. Um, More about your thoughts in the industry and in advancements, or what you're seeing, the trends, right? As we maybe 2021, maybe like give us just a preview of what you're thinking is next.
Yeah, it's a good question. I can't tell you too much because otherwise
Right.
I'm sure there's a competitor listening and they might take advantage of that. But uh, I'll tell you, building on that DNA concept, um, starting with the data solutions, besides Blue IQ, we are investing a lot of time and energy into what we call smart classification. And essentially, if you're a customs broker or a customs filer as a freight forwarder, the classification and finding the right tariff for any particular product requires typically tremendous amounts of reference data and, frankly, a lot of experience on the broker or the forwarder's part. It's very time consuming. It's costly if you get it wrong. And so we're building out a data solution called Smart Classification that puts a lot of intelligence in there. It doesn't replace the user. I wouldn't call it artificial intelligence. And instead, it makes the user more effective. And it actually takes a lot of their experience and really puts it into the technology. So we're kind of toying around the idea of it's augmented intelligence. It's augmenting your users with data and smarts and frankly, some level of artificial intelligence to make them more effective.
Cool. That's
Yeah.
great.
No, it's cool. I think people are going to love it. I think, there's that. Um, the other thing I'll just throw out there as a kind of a final thought as we do run out of time here, small parcel, right? I think there's two elements of small parcel that we're seeing, trend wise, that's important. On one hand, if we talk about what I just touched on, which is customs and import and so forth, we're seeing a lot of energy around what's some people call low value consignments. So if
Okay.
I am buying from Alibaba and I'm in the States, or frankly, if I'm buying from Alibaba from I'm living in Germany, the governments and the customs agencies are really changing the rules for what you need to do when I'm importing on a small scale, a low value consignment. And so there's a lot of energy from various companies that we're working with saying, how can I automate that process? How can I make the import process, for lack of a better term, frictionless? Because the last thing I want, especially when I'm dealing with a B2C order, is for that inventory to get stuck in customs for days, weeks, or longer because the right paperwork wasn't filed. And so as we think about our economy moving more towards B2C and some of those parcel dynamics changing, there's that element that I think a lot of people tend to forget.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah,
No
yeah,
doubt. Especially until you classify it wrong and the government pings you with fines
exactly.
or holds up your inventory, as you just said. So
Exactly. And then there's
that's
some other elements as well. Um, I think we're seeing a lot more demand from TMS users, frankly, to change the dynamic. For years, as an industry, you had a TMS, whether it was on-prem or cloud, that managed truckload, LTL, maybe ocean, and a little bit of parcel. But if I was a high volume parcel shipper, you'd use a product like BluJay's or others,
mhm.
on-prem or hosted in your warehouse for dealing with all the label printing and tying to the WMS and the like. But there's a greater push for companies to say, hey, how can I holistically look at my transportation, all of my spend, my analytics? Do I have opportunities to do optimization a little bit differently and ship less parcel and more LTL, less LTL, more truckload, whatever it might be? And I do think you're going to see over the course of the next 12 to 18 months, a convergence of these two worlds of the traditional TMS and the traditional parcel system. I'm calling it all mode TMS, a little bit, probably not the right term, but it's the way I like to think about it, at least all ground modes TMS. And
Sure.
I think you're going to see a lot of a lot of energy and excitement in the industry because it's going to, I think, help directors and VPs of transportation and heads of supply chain, look at their transportation a little more holistically.
That's great. And, I'll validate that for you, because some of our customers, we're talking to our customers and they're specifically saying to us, hey, yeah, we have LTL, we have truckload, but we have a lot of parcel as well. We need a TMS that can manage all that.
Yep.
And so, yeah, we're seeing that as well. So maybe that's why we got joint customers.
It's a good thing. We should keep this partnership up.
Yeah, I think we will.
Yeah.
But we have one question real quick. It says,
Yeah.
how's your implementation strategy been affected by the pandemic?
Oh, what a great question. We actually had a conversation just yesterday. We do what's called a go-to-market meeting where each one of our regions, the US and Europe and APAC, the whole teams, services, sales, marketing, product, get together and just take a look and say, what have the last 6 months shown us and what do the next 6 months look like? And one of the questions that did come up was just that, which was, our implementations are almost entirely, online now, right? There's almost no travel whatsoever. And I will tell you, for some companies, right, it was a bit of a shock, right? You're used to doing face to face, and there's no question. There are times whether it's an all-day meeting, which is really hard on Zoom, or if it's a pretty crunchy meeting where you've got some difficult topics, there are definitely times where being face to face really makes a difference. At the same time, I think what people are realizing is those times aren't as often as we once thought. And I suspect, especially because most of the technology nowadays is cloud anyway, so you're not dealing with installing software. I suspect that whenever we turn to a normal lifestyle and people can go back into an office on a regular basis, the expectations of people jumping on a plane and spending 3 or 4 days on site um, probably will change. And frankly, it's better for the environment. It's better for a customer's bottom line because they're not having to pay for all the travel expenses. And also, if I'm on site, you're paying for my entire time. And not every project, every phase of every project requires people full time. Sometimes I'm in a
Right.
configuration stage. Sometimes I'm in testing or support. And so I think there's a better balance that we're going to find today. We continue to push forward. We have a fantastic team. We got fantastic customers. And so we've had no shortage of go lives. The pace hasn't slowed down at all just because we're remote. It just required some adjustment.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. Well, listen, there's another question that popped up. I know you've got a hard stop. So unless you can take it, it's up to you.
If it's an easy one, let's take it. No, I've got time. Let's go ahead and do it.
Okay. And it says, David, have the forwarder broker capabilities evolved from the Keywell days?
Oh yeah, absolutely,
What I thought.
absolutely. No, we've got the customer portal one is one that I just mentioned, right? We've got, uh, I'd love to show you the release notes, love to show you a demonstration, but we have, a very large, substantial R&D team focused on that forwarding application, and not just the forwarding capabilities, and not just the customer portal, but it's integrated to our global customs platform right now, so it helps you provide that frictionless import, if you would, or export. And so it's definitely a big investment area. You'll actually see some announcements coming up on. Largely technology related as it comes to our forwarding application in the coming weeks. And so if you are interested in forwarding, definitely reach out to me. I'd love to chat with you further and connect you with our team.
All right, perfect. Well, we are at the end of our time. David, you've been gracious to give us an extra couple minutes. As always, it's great to see you, great to talk to you, get your thoughts on things. It sounds like you guys are up to a lot of really cool things, and I still want to get a demo of the BluIQ.
Fantastic.
And thanks again, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this session with David. And for more information, you can go to BluJay Solutions, to their website. And then please join us next week as we continue our partner series and we keep rolling. So, David, thanks. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.